So I will call this March 5th, 2026 meeting of the Wakefield Conservation Commission meeting to order. Roll call first. Eleanor,
Present.
Jennifer,
Present.
and I'm present. All right, we have all three of us. A news note, I got something from Bronwyn telling me that there's an agenda item for the council on Monday to appoint another member. Anyone else aware of that? Ethan, are you?
I
that
received an email from Bronwyn.
Oh, you did. Okay. That's as much as I knew.
it got sent to us when the application came through.
Okay.
Usually it gets sent to the chair and then we write a letter of support.
Well,
I
that's
think it
not
was
how we
sent
did it.
to Paul
Huh?
and I.
When did it come to us?
Mm,
I don't remember
Maybe
it
it
at
was
all.
last Friday.
Okay. I would have to go back and look. Would Sherry have sent that?
Yes.
All right, I'll go look for it later. But anyway, it looks like we may be four. So anyway, tonight's agenda is strictly the wetlands bylaw. And I guess the question is, does anyone recall where we stopped the last time? So that we can pick it up there rather than recapitulating everything.
Yeah, I sent around a draft that included unresolved comments from our previous meeting.
Okay, oh, that's the draft that
The basis
the
was,
February 28th draft you sent is the one you sent around then.
yeah.
So any comment that's in there is still unresolved or
Yeah, it took me a little while to start kind of resolving the comments. So there might be some on the first page or two that can just be resolved. But yeah, essentially most of the ones left are matters that we were going to discuss more.
Okay, well then we probably should work through them. Do we want to put it up on the screen?
Sure, yeah.
Seems like the best way. All right. We find our meeting. Share. All right, you have my version of it up on screen now. First comment was asterisks, and those should have been deleted.
Oh yeah, we accepted that.
Yes, we did. So shall we go through and delete these as we?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I will do that. Done. We'll just get rid of the asterisks too while I'm at it.
So actually, okay, this is correct.
Sorry. Okay, and then the next step would be getting down to jurisdiction. Jennifer, you commented align better with the Wetlands Protection Act, and that is related to jurisdiction.
I think that's a comment that I probably wrote in the meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that was our.
all right. So we don't really need to
discussions.
do anything there. We can probably take that one out. saying any here.
I had a couple comments and edits in there just about
Yeah.
cleaning the jurisdiction section. That's what that
Yeah.
was for.
Yeah, you wanted to eliminate the word any there?
Yeah, so by saying any,
Yeah.
it includes those resources, whether they're bordering or isolated. But we also then went on to write the word isolated wetlands. So it essentially defines isolated wetlands in two different spots. So
Mhm.
removing any is one of the options to fix that. And I wrote below what you could say instead, because that first bullet point includes any wetland, but then it also includes isolated wetlands, any ponding, any inundation. It was just would be best to separate some of those into different categories below. So the second bullet there
So what you've
was
done is take the first bullet and break it up into three other bullets.
pretty much, yeah.
My concern is just, do we lose things? I mean, we appear to lose ponding area of any size, for example.
Yeah, that was one where saying ponding area, but also saying isolated wetlands could kind of get in each other's ways. So I think defining one of those versus the other would be better to do. Because a ponding area would be if you said any pond or any isolated wetlands with no minimum size, that would include a ponding area as well.
I apologize. I was talking through, but I was muted. Whose version are we looking at? Because the version of the document that was circulated doesn't have these um, purple comments, I guess. Was this version
These here,
circulated?
those are Bill Renault's, the ones that are sort of bluish purple.
Oh, well, who's sharing their screen right now? Is that you?
I am.
Okay. Sorry, are we looking at the email that Jennifer circulated?
I'm not a
I
hundred
think I got
percent.
Jennifer's email
Oh,
Monday, and then I added some edits to it on Tuesday.
oh, so this is probably the one that I'm guessing this is the one I sent because that's the title that I put on.
Yeah, it's the one you had sent. I just added a couple edits. I started going through that for the Tuesday meeting this week.
Okay.
Those
Let me.
just my
Okay.
comments on after talking about it on Saturday.
Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at the one that Jennifer sent. So let me pull yours up too.
And maybe then that's the one Paul should be sharing, right?
Okay.
I think that's what he's sharing. He's sharing
I'm sharing the
Ethan's.
wetlands bylaw draft with unresolved comments, February 28th, 26th.
Well,
Uh,
that was Jennifer's
This
name, but
this was the
it's
one
what
from the
Jennifer named it,
28th.
but this also I think includes your comments, Ethan, the ones that you put in, right?
Yes, this was from the 28th, and then
Yeah.
just a handful of comments that I added after that meeting.
so what email should we refer to? Like if we want to look at this? Did you send it like with the day of Tuesday, or I'm just trying to because I had
Yeah, I
put
think I
comments
sent
on
this
it.
on Tuesday.
Okay.
I mean, we could always go back to the one from Saturday, but I think these are comments that
Oh,
will come up anyways that we talked about.
okay. So bylaw draft for tonight. Okay, okay. Thank you. No, that's
Send
helpful.
out
Sorry.
one today as well, Ethan?
No, just from Tuesday.
Oh, all right.
It was on the agenda, so that's why I said tonight on Tuesday.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Nope, that's good. No, we should look at your comments.
All right, let's get back to where we want to be. And I'm having a problem finding my way back. Let's try it again. Wetlands bylaw draft. All right, which one are we doing?
I think we should probably use the one that Ethan sent on March 3rd.
All right, Ethan, why don't you put it up then? And we'll work from that.
It was the same one that you just had up. That's the one we want to look at.
All right.
I just don't have it editable right now if I pulled it up.
All right, fine. Share. It's there. All right. So what's next?
So we were discussing jurisdiction. Okay. So and Ethan had made some suggestions. Let's
Ethan
see.
was suggesting we break up that first bullet into 4 others. One of the things I just want to make sure is that we don't miss something in the course of that.
Yeah, I see like inundation by ground or land subject to flooding. I didn't add that on. This is more just laying out the ideas. So you could always add that as a separate bullet if you want that to be jurisdictional too. The land subject to flooding and inundation by groundwater, as well as the ponding area. But those are ones that you just want to make sure you're not overlapping different topics.
No, it's a good point.
I'm not sure I understand why we'd be overlapping or whether there'd be an issue with doing so.
Like if you said ponding area as jurisdictional, but also
Yeah.
isolated wetlands, those are
Okay.
sort of two, like in practice, those would be two of the same, bodies of water. So if you define those differently, you just risk it not being clear or taking away from one definition and having the other one stepping in its way.
Paul, I think the Wetlands Protection Act defines, isolated land subject to flooding or isolated wetlands versus bordering wetlands. So with this one, um, or isolated land subject to flooding, I guess is kind of what any ponding area would be. Ethan, I'm trying to think of an example, but like, when you go to Quantapowhat Parkway and like in front of 100 Quantapowhat, there's sort of this grassy area where there's always water that pools in the lawn and it looks almost pond-like. I don't know that we would call it an isolated wetland, but it is a ponding area, that is storing either stormwater or the groundwater level is high. I guess I would, I don't think we would need like a 25-foot setback from that. Like Paul, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
No, you've never
Um,
noticed that?
Where?
Like sort of near 50 Quantapowhat Parkway. It might be more in front of 100 Quantapowhat Parkway. Just in front of the building, off the road, there's an area that's in the lawn that has a couple of I think those yellow irises that are maybe invasive, but it's basically lawn that forms a giant puddle, right? It is
Okay.
filling a function of storing stormwater or groundwater is high. I guess the question is, do we think that's jurisdictional? I would not want to put, that would be a ponding area of any size. I don't think that needs a 25-foot setback. On the other hand, it is storing stormwater. So I think we have to decide if how we would want to approach that.
Yeah, it's a good example because if it was the land subject to flooding, it wouldn't have a setback. But if it was ponding, it would. But from what you've described, it would kind of fall under both categories. So that's a case where, like you said, it would be subject to both definitions that kind of have different standards.
And I think in that case, Paul, we wouldn't want to, like, because it's in a lawn area, you know what I mean? It's already altered. We don't want to put a 25-foot setback on that.
Okay.
Um,
Well, the question is, do we want it to be jurisdictional? Regardless of whether we put a setback on it or not, do we want it to be jurisdictional? Or because it's in a lawn, are we taking it out?
I think that's a good idea, and I think that was in Elaine's comments as well, that, this is like the person who's at the bottom of the hill, and water, especially as there's more development, the water kind of flows down to them, settles in
Right.
their area. So I think we do, or at least we want to have a way of evaluating it, which means making it jurisdictional.
So you want ponding, so we want to keep ponding area of any size, I think is what you're suggesting, Jennifer.
Well, what if we put a threshold on an isolated wetland? Um, and an isolated wetland would have a setback. But anything under that threshold, we would evaluate as a potential, maybe not even through an NOI, but as a potential isolated land subject to flooding.
I think we want to just make sure people don't fill it, you know?
That's the
I,
main thing. Yeah.
I was hoping the stormwater bylaw would kind of address that, but the threshold of 15,000 square feet is, bigger than a pond. So I don't think that would help us.
About a third of an acre. All right, so what is your suggestion on the language here then? Are we deleting ponding area of any size, or are we putting it down with isolated wetlands so that it becomes part of the isolated wetland definition?
I think that depends what you want to be jurisdictional. Because I know most of what we talked about with ponding area is typically covered under the other resources. So we talked about maybe adding a minimum size or leaving it as is, but depending on what we do,
Oh,
we can just write it whichever way works.
maybe we want to say ponding area um, that is within 100 feet. You know what I mean? That is within 100 feet of a wetland. Because that's what we want to look at, right? It's not quite, so it's not like we're going to be suddenly going to every single parking lot in town, with a,
Well, we shouldn't be looking at parking lots.
no.
And we aren't looking at lawns either. I mean, I thought we were
Right.
clear that we were not going to do lawns.
But if you change drainage, right, you want to encourage people to keep their existing drainage, not alter it. You know what I mean? So putting like fill it like I think the only thing we want to um, regulate in that situation is discouraging people from filling those natural ponding areas
Okay.
that occur within an area subject to our jurisdiction, which would be within 100 feet of a wetland.
I think that's a good idea as a concept. I've just never seen it written that way before.
Mhm.
And should be Usually you'll just define the resource no matter what the location is, not that it's within a buffer zone. Because then on top of that land subject to flooding, you'll then have that other 100-foot buffer. So then no matter where it is, it'll fall within a buffer. So I think
I
keeping that one simple would be better, but you can always write in some exemptions and other performance standards later in the bylaw to prevent that from happening.
I mean, I think anything that's within 100 feet of a wetland is our jurisdiction, right?
Yeah, it's a little
It
different.
is
It's a little odd to
potentially
say.
buffer, yes.
Yeah, it's a little different to say like this resource when it's within 100 feet of another resource. I've never seen something written that way before. So that's probably a little more complicated than what we'd be looking to do. I think it covers the interest that we're looking to protect, but there might be a different way to write that, like in
Mm,
the performance standards.
yeah, I think that's
Because then like what would be the difference between a ponding area versus a land subject to inundation by surface water? Like would those be different on the ground?
I think it's the same thing.
I think if they're the same, it might be better to choose one versus the other to make jurisdictional.
So instead of ponding area, you would say land subject to inundation by groundwater or surface water.
But you already have land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater or surface water, just a little further along in the same
Yeah.
bullet. So
Can we move it to its own bullet? So it's a
what,
separate,
what?
the ponding area of any size and the inundation by groundwater or surface water. Just copy paste those into their own bullet and we can kind of work on those.
Yeah, I would keep the ponding area if you were choosing between those two, but then thinking about a minimum size would kind of rule out any of those ponds in parking lots that we talked about.
I mean, on the other hand, I think Bill was saying, sorry, I'm just going back to this, but um, just to keep our thoughts simple, if we can copy those two things because they would have their own performance standards or, no setback. Um, and then we can kind of look at each one because the first bullet should really have 25-foot setback, right? And then you have
We
where's
don't say anything about setbacks at all in this first part of jurisdiction.
right, but it's like you don't even have vernal pools up. Oh, there we are, last. But if you have them broken out, so then your jurisdiction, the resource areas are different. And then in the next section, when you talk about setbacks, we can kind of follow, you know, the same structure so that it's clear, you know, these are the ones that have a 25-foot no disturb. This is what has a
Well,
100-foot
we
no
can
disturb.
do that, yes.
Okay.
I'm just not sure what you're suggesting we want to say here then as jurisdictional.
I'm just saying don't combine the ponding area of any size with any bank fresh water. I would make it its own bullet. Because right now,
Well, Ethan
the
already
first
has
and
done
second,
that. The first bullet is essentially redundant to the next three,
right.
except that it doesn't have ponding area of any size in it. It also does not have land subject to flooding or inundation.
So that's why I'm saying instead of sorry, sorry, I was looking at the version that Jennifer had circulated. I didn't look through this version that was sent on Tuesday. So my suggestion would be to, he's essentially taken the first bullet and broken it out, right, into the second bullet.
Yeah, but then in the second bullet, I added the second half where it says those resources bordering on any of these other resources.
Right.
That way you can define those as bordering and then
Right.
isolated as separate.
Right. And I would have isolated wetlands not bordering on,
Where do
you
you
know,
have that bordering on?
in the second bullet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because if you just said
But
if you said any marsh, that would mean any marsh, including isolated. So then when you define isolated in the next bullet, there's kind of two definitions there.
But like an isolated wetland has a bank, right?
I don't know, does it?
It,
I
yeah,
said
because
a
how you
stream would
define the
have a
bank is
bank.
the,
A pond may have a bank, but one of these depressions that's subject to inundation or flooding does not. Is that an isolated wetland or is that something else? And do we want that in here as a separate bullet?
we need to go back and look at another bylaw to see.
I think that depends on how you want to define those words, the ponding, how you want to define a ponding area and what you actually want to include in that definition.
Well,
Because you
the
might
way it
cover
is,
that.
the way it's set up right now, if I take out that first bullet, which I have, we're covering any bank, freshwater wetland, marsh, wet meadow, bog, or swamp bordering, but only if they are bordering on any lake, stream, river, or pond. Then we are
Well,
protecting isolated wetlands, whatever that is.
but those are also the same, right?
What?
An isolated wetland can be a bog, right? That doesn't border, like the only distinction is it doesn't border on,
Yes, it's the BVW question.
right?
Well, and that was, I thought, something we were trying to pick up because the
It,
Wetlands Protection Act is not protecting small isolated wetlands.
we are, but we haven't defined what an isolated wetland is here. It just says isolated
No,
wetland.
we have not.
That's it, you know,
Yeah, so
and an
those
ice,
protections would come in the definition.
Do we have it somewhere? Yes, we do. Number 3, below.
mhm.
And this is where the ponding area was mentioned. So why you might want to include it in the jurisdiction or why it might already be included if you write the definition as this way.
Underlain
You
by
leave
hydric
the
soils.
definition as this. You don't have to do much more up above here, do you?
Right.
No, that should be everything because it does include ponding areas as isolated wetlands.
Isolated wetland is a freshwater wetland that is not protected because it's isolated or disconnected.
Mhm.
And shall mean a ponding area of any size underlain by hydric soils.
Mhm.
So essentially, an isolated wetland is a ponding area of any size.
Underlain by hydric soils.
Yes.
That's the key.
Well, yeah, if it's underlain by asphalt, it doesn't count.
All right, so go back up to,
We don't have intermittent streams picked up here. We've lost them as a result of deleting that first bullet.
I think you could add intermittent stream to the first bullet, like the second bullet. And actually, river shouldn't, I feel like river should be its own bullet because that has,
Well, any perennial stream, river, brook, or creek is the last one, top of the next page.
okay,
So its streams are covered, but we haven't picked up,
intermittent stream.
right.
Okay.
Usually with the
Not
intermittent,
sure, have we covered all land subject to flooding?
I think right now that's not jurisdictional with what you have here at the moment.
No, it does not look like we have land subject to flooding or um, intermittent streams. Both of those are missing.
Hmm.
I know with the intermittent streams, usually you'll have either a bank or a wetland bordering the stream. So last time we talked about it, we kind of realized that the stream would be protected because it has a bank or because it has a wetland on it. So by protecting the bank and the BVW, you're protecting the intermittent stream. So I think that's why that
But,
section came out.
Mm,
well, we have to be careful though, because the only place we pick up bank is in the next bullet. I think we'd better be careful to qualify stream as being either intermittent or perennial, whether stream, whether intermittent or perennial, or something along those lines. Because otherwise, we're gonna lose intermittent streams.
mhm.
Well, the way it's written here says any stream, so that includes perennial and intermittent. But the last time we talked about it, we decided to remove intermittent streams because it's protected by an associated BVW. So I don't think that was in that first bullet point there. It was there, but it's protected by the jurisdictional bank on the intermittent stream or the jurisdictional wetland on the intermittent stream. It's something you could include or not include, but I don't think including it will change or reduce your protections for it.
I mean, don't we want to, for an intermittent stream, don't we want to define it so that when we have a performance standard that says don't fill it, um, that, is in reference to the definition as opposed to in reference
Yes,
to the bank?
I absolutely agree with you there, Jennifer. I think we need to have it there.
Hmm.
We can do it here in what is now the first bullet, or swamp birding on it.
I would recommend a separate bullet if you added it there, because that first bullet was really a simplified version. The more you add to it, the more you risk missing out on certain definitions.
So you're
Then,
suggesting what, a new bullet that is just intermittent stream?
yes, and then you'd want to define it later on if we haven't already.
I have no idea whether we have.
I believe we have. I'll check.
Yep, it's there.
And what about land subject to flooding?
You'd have to add it here if you want it to be jurisdictional. Because it's not jurisdictional the way it's written now.
That's what I thought.
Is that where we would want to use, though, the term ponding area of any size to distinguish it from the Wetlands Protection Act? Bordering land subject to flooding, isolated land subject to flooding.
I think if you make land subject to flooding jurisdictional, you would be kind of copying the WPA, but it would still be jurisdictional. That would be different from a ponding area. It's just whether or not you want it to be jurisdictional, even with no additional protections. So they would have to be separate definitions.
Well,
to
the
include
additional
both.
protections would be, meeting performance standards before you fill them in, whereas under the Wetlands Protection Act, there's, if it's below a certain size, I don't think there's a lot
There's
stopping.
there's a good amount of performance standards for the bordering land
Bordering line.
subject to flooding. You can't fill that in to any extent without mitigating for it.
Right, and for isolated land subject to flooding, there's a size threshold.
Yeah. So what you'd be looking at is changing the minimum size or adding a setback. Those would be the two main things.
Well, we generally have been doing this to eliminate the minimum size because otherwise there's no reason to do this. So the WPA already picks it up. Unless we just drop our minimum size down to a lower level.
I'm in favor of using the term ponding area of any size and not talking about land subject to flooding.
Okay.
Okay.
Land subject to flooding.
Yeah, the WPA has bordering land subject to flooding, which would essentially be the FEMA 100-year floodplain. So I guess that's already covered. It's more like in that example in front of 100 Quantapowhat where there's that sort of ponding area in the middle of lawn. It's not necessarily bordering land subject to flooding, or maybe it is because I'd have to go back and look at the FEMA map.
Do you think it's isolated land subject to flooding?
Oh, let me pull up the map.
But I mean, I think that's a good example, but
We
again, going back to Elaine's feedback, I think we wanted to allow them to be smaller.
Yeah.
Land subject to flooding would cover the issue, right?
Yeah, bordering land subject to flooding. So
Why do we need bordering?
no, that's how the WPA
Well, that's
has
what
it.
we're trying to, but that's not what we're trying to do.
Right. Okay.
So Jennifer, you were suggesting, no, we don't do land subject to flooding, we just do ponding area of any size. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what makes sense to me.
Okay.
Do we add it to isolated wetlands or do we put it down as its own separate bullet? I don't
I
care.
think it's a bullet.
Fine. Done.
From a practical perspective, if someone has one of these areas, I mean, how would we want or allow them to come to the Concom? I mean, if if they weren't sure if it required an NOI, I guess they might contact Ethan or just come to us with
Come
some
with an
information.
NRED.
Hmm. Okay.
I mean, essentially, our procedures under this are going to be the same as they are currently.
Yeah.
It's really that we're picking up a broader jurisdiction.
So really this would apply because I think, Ethan, do you think if there's a stormwater review required, which would be for two family or more, this type of issue would get picked up, right? Through bills? Isn't that what he was
Um,
saying?
which issue of ponding areas?
Yeah.
Um,
Like looking at the like where water's getting stored on the property, like before they start regrading and things.
if it was in front of us, that would be something that we consider. That's what
I
you're
guess what
asking.
what I'm asking is how much of these situations kind of go before Bill? right? Isn't it
So,
any two-family, like before
oh,
engineering?
um, for stormwater review,
Yeah.
uh, as is today, it's like 5 or 6 units before it requires stormwater report.
Do you remember, guys, when we went to the Street house and they were just doing a two-family and he had to create that sort of ponding area in the lawn
Yeah.
to reduce runoff from the property, and Hayes Engineering said it was because of the stormwater bylaw.
Forgot that part.
That one didn't go in front of the engineering for stormwater review. It was too small. That was more of something they did for us to prevent runoff from going directly to the wetland.
Okay.
I think they just didn't have an area to send it off to, so they kept it in the pond to allow it to dissipate into the groundwater.
Yeah, I think that ponding area of any size, we'll have to figure out how to approach that. That's going to be the
Okay. So where do we go from here?
So Bill's comment, I didn't understand. I'm still kind of stuck on this on the
Which
riverfront
one?
area because um, under the Wetlands Protection Act, the riverfront area is the land's, I guess that's the definition. It's 200 feet
Is riverfront area,
is riverfront. So,
which means it's jurisdictional.
right. So I think he's interpreting that we're putting another 200 feet beyond the riverfront area, which,
No, that's not
right,
the case, though.
This is
right.
based on the setback section where it says there's a 100-foot buffer on all resources. So when you list this as a resource, that's when the buffer comes on top of it. So I
Mhm.
think it's fine the way it's written here. It would just have to be fixed later on in the
Okay.
other section.
Take care of it there, where we essentially call out that this 100-foot buffer or 25 foot does not include riverfront area.
Yeah, you would point out which of
Yeah.
these jurisdictional resources do have the buffer. You
Okay.
just make sure to not include the riverfront.
Okay. Sorry, can you go back for a sec? Like this, collectively, the resource area is protected under this bylaw. Um,
No person shall remove, fill, dredge, build upon, degrade, discharge into, or otherwise alter the following resource areas.
okay.
First question, before we wrap it up, too, are we keeping the word any here?
I think so
That was my inclination as well.
because you're essentially like, if you have any doubts, we've kind of identified these other things too. But I wanted to look at that last paragraph, collectively, the resource area is protected by this bylaw because we seem to repeat ourselves without oh, hang on.
No,
Okay, go down without filing a notice of intent. But really, they could do an RDA or something else. So should we, like, we're not necessarily going to have them do an NOI for all of these things, right?
It does say they can't alter the resource without the NOI. I think it still allows them to like alter the buffer zone with an RDA. Just altering the resource itself would have to be an NOI.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to include it because it doesn't like add
That's
any
helpful.
protections. It just explains
Yeah.
what the bylaw does.
Okay. Thank you.
But this is where when you reference the resource areas protected by the bylaw in the buffer section, this passage here defines the above jurisdictional resources as the resource areas. So that's where you'd want to double check the wording on that one.
Okay.
So
Say
as
that
it's
again,
currently,
Ethan?
Like here you almost define this jurisdictional section as the quote unquote resource areas protected by this bylaw. So if you use those words later on, it would reference back to all the additions you just made above, including the riverfront. So like when you get to the buffer section, you just have to make sure you call out the specific resources rather than just saying all of the resources protected by the bylaw.
and I think the way that it's written now does not include the 100-foot buffer as a resource area. But, you know, I noticed in Elaine's comment, she made a distinction between a jurisdictional area and a resource area. And I mean, that makes sense to me. So I think I'm okay with not having the 100-foot buffer as a resource area. But I just want to confirm that that's how you all are also seeing this section as not including the
Well, at
100-foot
this
buffer.
point, we've eliminated that whole 100-foot buffer from the discussion
Yeah.
because we took out that part of that first bullet.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have the 100-foot buffer in here at all.
Okay. Okay. But we do want that area to be, don't we want the 100, even if we don't call it a resource area, we do want the 100-foot buffer to be jurisdictional and defined within our jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's done in that other section, I think later on, where you add the setback and the 100-foot buffer.
But does that make that
Let's
area
go look at that
jurisdictional?
because I'm not sure if we don't call it out here as part of jurisdiction, is it picked up? Where is it in the those are definitions, exemptions.
It would be the section C that you have there.
Right there, following activities within the 100-foot buffer zone. We don't define the 100-foot buffer zone anywhere, though. There's nothing. There's nothing in any of this that calls out the 100-foot buffer until you get to this C, which is actually in the section on exemptions.
Yeah, I don't know that that makes sense. I'm looking at the the bylaw spreadsheet that Mac does, and when they talk about jurisdiction, aura/buffer zone, it says if your bylaw ordinance doesn't already protect the buffer zone as a wetland resource area, then amend it so that it identifies buffer zone as a wetland resource area and designate it as adjacent upland resource area, aura. So I think we were being consistent with other um, municipalities that were including buffer zone distances.
Well, then
And
go back and look at what we've got right now because it appears that we've totally eliminated buffer zone from our consideration here.
Yeah, I think under the jurisdiction section, you might want to add a part that says land within 100 feet of the above resources. That's sort of what the WPA says.
We had that in that first bullet.
Yes, we did. I think that's where it included the buffer on the streams, potentially. Maybe that's why it got taken out. But it also says in that part A above, where you say no person shall remove, fill, dredge, or alter the following resources. By including that buffer there, that's where it becomes a resource. You see in that section A at the top. Because when it says the
I
following
see
resource
that, yes.
areas, yeah.
All right. What I'm going to do then is take this and put it down here.
So what, sorry, I'm just looking at North Andover, for example. They identify their resource areas, isolated vegetated wetland, ephemeral pool, vegetated, these things, and they say any 100-foot buffer zone of wetland areas of these bullets above.
Well, that's what we just did.
Okay, sorry, and I'm looking this, and then
That's
they
what I
have,
just did with for everything but perennial stream, river, etc.
mhm.
Because they have a 200-foot riverfront area.
But I think you would want to add it under a separate section if you're going to have that the A bullet at the top, the way it's written, any of these bullets beneath it will become a resource. So that's where the buffer became the resource before. Because if you were to
Well,
just
what I was
say,
hearing folks suggest
yeah,
is we want the buffers to be a resource area. Isn't that what
That's what MAC recommends.
that's what MAC recommends, is that you create your buffer area and put it into your definition as part of your resource area.
that was different from what I think Bill recommended and different from what we were working towards. I mean,
Well,
you
I
could do
think,
that. You would just need performance standards for it.
yeah, and I don't think, for example, we are talking about having a buffer around a ponding area of any size. And I think that was one of Bill's primary concerns is that he doesn't want to have to worry about a little pond in someone's yard behind their house when he's doing work around town. So maybe we don't have a buffer around a ponding area.
Well, we could shift things around.
Or maybe we have smaller buffers around some of these, like a 25-foot buffer around an isolated wetland
And an intermittent
ponding
stream.
area and
Yeah,
an intermittent stream.
I agree with that.
And
Good point. Yeah.
that should solve a lot of Bill's issues with.
Yeah, so vernal pool would have a 100-foot buffer. And we don't,
Yes or no on that? Do you want one?
vernal pool should have a 100-foot buffer.
All right. Which ones do you want to move?
So I would put vernal pool on after the bank, freshwater wetland, marsh.
And what I'm suggesting is I can just we can pull out isolated wetlands. Are we saying that doesn't get a buffer?
It gets a 25-foot buffer.
And ponding areas get a 25-foot buffer.
No buffer.
No buffer.
Mhm.
So would a ponding area be different from a pond itself?
Yes.
Yeah, ponding area is underlain by hydric soil.
So how do you prevent someone from saying that their pond is a ponding area and removes the buffer zone? Or that a
Pond has
lake is actually a
vegetation.
ponding area?
Well, this is where maybe inundation by groundwater or surface water could be the better definition.
We're back to where we started.
Yeah, I would kind of put that one towards the bottom because honestly,
Which
that's
one?
going to be the ponding area of any size.
I did.
Okay. Oh,
It's
why am
just
I not?
for perennial streams.
Yeah, I would move the perennial
Essentially,
stream
right
one.
now, the bank, freshwater wetland, etc., intermittent stream, isolated wetlands, land under the above resource areas, vernal pools, all have the 100-foot buffer.
Land under the above resource area. I don't think that has its own buffer. When you look at the wetlands, um, there's a good slide that the circuit rider has.
No,
Well,
the land under does not have a buffer.
because the things above it have the buffer.
Yep.
I'm not sure why land under is even.
We don't have to mention it. It might just confuse people.
I think
What?
the only situation I could think of it would apply to would be like dredging.
Hmm.
Look, what would be
Would be dredging.
dredging?
That would be protected under WPA. So I don't think we would be adding any additional protections to that.
Well, and we already say no person shall dredge.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's remove it.
That's the case with the Wetlands Protection Act today, though. You can't dredge or build or alter the land under water bodies either.
Well, okay, we need to get our jurisdiction straight because that's fundamentally what we're about here. We
I
want
think
the
that
first bullet, any bank, freshwater wetland, etc., correct?
Hmm.
Intermittent streams. Yes, it's
Yes.
That's
something
good.
we're picking up that WPA does not cover.
Right, so that would have the 25-foot buffer,
It would
right?
have a 25-foot buffer, not a 100-foot buffer.
Right, same with isolated wetlands.
Does that put it in the order we need?
I would probably do the perennial stream first, so it's more restrictive, less restrictive, less.
Mhm.
But the way it's written here with that buffer, it does add the 100-foot buffer to isolate to intermittent streams because the first bullet says any stream, so that means perennial and intermittent. So when you call out the buffer zone as 100 foot, it does apply to the intermittent stream there.
Don't we want that?
I think you said you wanted 25 feet.
For an intermittent stream, which we're going to regulate like a wetland.
So
So I
maybe.
would,
Okay, well, we
Yeah.
dropped intermittent stream down below the 100 foot.
so I think you just need to delete stream in the first bullet.
Yeah, because when you say
That would be a bad idea because then we don't pick up any streams.
Well, so this is, sorry,
If
the
we
last
take,
bullet, you're picking up all the perennial streams. So that's why I'm saying,
okay, yep, I'll go with you there.
but you
so,
would
We
still want
also
to
have
protect.
stream, river, or pond.
right, but that has a 200-foot setback. That's why I'm saying make that bullet first, and then your next items have the 100-foot setback, and then you have isolated wetlands, which have the 25-foot setback.
Okay.
Or buffer, for lack of a better word.
I would leave perennial stream where it is because we're calling out a 200-foot riverfront area.
Okay,
And then
yes,
we just take stream and river out of the first.
okay, that's fine. I was
But in
just
the
making,
first one, you want to protect the wetlands that border the streams. So that's why the stream and river is in there.
Undo.
Oh, okay. Bordering on a lake, river, stream, pond.
I think the trouble might be coming from the way that A bullet point is worded. You might want to say something simple like the following areas are subject to jurisdiction. That would avoid making it all a resource.
except Mac does want us to make uh, the buffer zones a resource area.
Yeah, but I think we were saying we didn't want that to happen. Or you could have it as a resource too. You just have to decide either way which ones we want to do.
We are
I'll
saying
avoid doing
here that lands within 100 feet of the resource areas, which are the buffer areas, are considered resource areas. Because
Yes,
right up
that's what
above
this says
here,
here.
we pick it up that way.
Yeah, so this what we have here makes that 100-foot buffer become a resource. Correct. But I think that was kind of the opposite of what we were looking to do, at least
I
based on
think
Bill's comments.
I think that's the opposite of what Bill was looking to do.
No, Bill wasn't suggesting to make the buffer a resource.
No, I'm saying he doesn't want it to be a resource,
No, he does
whereas
not.
Right. What
Mac
you have written
wants us
here,
to make it a resource area.
like what you have written here, does make it the
You want to
resource.
make it a resource area, Eleanor? I guess that's the question.
That's what Mac recommends.
Well, Mac tends to recommend very restrictive parts because that's what they work for. So it's just a matter of if we want to go along with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Do we
I-
want
I'm pretty
the
sure you have
buffer
to make a
area to be
buffer area
resource?
jurisdictional to make it stand. Now, whether it has to be the whole 100 feet, it's really, I guess, to Bill's point, it's really the 25 feet that we want the bylaw to apply to. Because the Wetlands Protection Act already has a 100-foot well, this is where I'm getting a little
Well, you want to make the buffer jurisdictional, but the jurisdictional part is different from something subject to protection, which would mean a resource.
source area.
Yep.
We want the buffer to be jurisdictional.
Yep.
And
We're
subject to
trying to make it
protection.
into a resource area, though.
Well, and subject to protection via setback.
Yes. Well, we aren't necessarily going to impose a 25-foot setback on top of the 100-foot buffer, though, Jennifer.
No, but the first 25 feet.
Yes.
Yep.
So maybe we need to phrase it as the first 25 feet will be a resource area for the aforementioned. Gotta find a
That's a
good
little different. You don't have to call that a resource area. I think you could just have that as a setback, like we have later on, saying that there's no build in the setback. But for the buffer and anything you call a buffer, you would want to make it jurisdictional, like with the word jurisdictional rather than the word
Okay,
protection
so
or
what do we
alter.
want for our jurisdiction here? Let's just take it from that. We want the first bullet, any bank, freshwater wetland, wet meadow, bog, or swamp bordering on any lake, stream, river, or pond. Yes,
Yes.
those are resource areas.
Mhm.
Any land under those resource areas is also jurisdictional. Any vernal pool and vernal pool habitat should be jurisdictional.
Mhm.
Lands within 100 feet should be jurisdictional, but they are not resource areas. Am I correct in my understanding?
That's what I think that's the intention, but what's written here says that it is a resource.
Right.
It comes from that
I,
section A
I
at the top.
understand that. And I guess what I'm asking the question of Jennifer and Eleanor is, do we want lands within 100 feet to be, which are buffer area, to be considered resource area? I can go either way on that question.
I think that's what all the other bylaws do. Like when we looked at
They,
Concord, now I'm looking at
they,
Concord's, their jurisdiction is any freshwater wetland, marsh, wet meadow, bog, swamp, flat bank, beach bordering on a reservoir, lake, pond, perennial or intermittent stream, river, brook, or creek, and adjoining lands out to a distance of 100 feet, known as the buffer zone. And then at the
yeah.
bottom, and then it goes on for the certified vernal pool habitat, any perennial stream, but collectively the resource areas protected by this bylaw.
Okay. Then I would say we leave it as this.
I think,
As
though,
long as this lands within 100 feet of any of the aforesaid resource area doesn't get us into a big loop of putting 100 feet on 100 feet on 100 feet. And I don't think it does because it's very specific to the aforesaid resource areas.
and then I think for
And then,
isolated uh,
and then intermittent streams, isolated wetlands, and ponding areas of any size do not have specifically called out buffers here. We could add into each of those three bullets, which shall have a 25-foot buffer, if that's
yes,
what our intention is.
yes, with the exception of ponding area of any size.
So intermittent stream and isolated wetlands get a 25-foot buffer.
Yes.
All right, what I'm going to do is copy this bullet
And
and
here's
just
a,
change 100 feet to 25 feet.
yep.
So it's intermittent stream and isolated wetlands. Then
And for vernal pool and vernal,
hold on, I need to
okay,
try
let me
to
have you finish
compose
this.
here for a minute of the previous two
Hmm.
aforementioned the previous, let's get how's that? Does that get us where we want to be?
Yes.
Yeah, now sorry, can we just address a comment on the vernal pool? I would say,
If we're done with this, we can,
okay,
but let's get this one out of the way.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the way that it looks right now.
Okay, Eleanor?
I just was going to say the ponding area of any size. Okay. I think,
That is below
yeah,
any of these, so it has no buffer.
right. I think Concord just calls it any land subject to flooding, but I think ponding area of any size is okay. I think people might get scared by that, but okay. Hmm, okay.
Okay, now what did you want to say about vernal pools?
I thought Bill's comment was he wanted us to have, well, it's probably okay. We can go down and look. It's just we say vernal pools and vernal pool habitat. We don't,
Right, and we have a definition of that down below.
okay. So that will include the 100 feet down there.
Well, do you want to have the whole 100 feet on top of the habitat or just on top of the
No,
pool
mm-mm,
itself?
just on top of the vernal pool.
Because then when you write both of them there, it adds the 100 feet onto both.
That's right,
When you say the land's within 100 feet.
because I believe as we get down here, vernal pool,
Do we need to use the term vernal pool habitat in the jurisdiction, or can we just say the vernal pool and the first 100 feet?
I think that's what we should do. I think that would address Bill's concerns.
vernal pool habitat is the adjacent upland resource area within 100 feet of the mean annual high water line of the vernal pool.
But we define it later on, right?
It's right here at the bottom of, it's number 9.
Mm-hmm. So we don't need it up above, I don't think. I think we just say 100 feet from a vernal pool. But maybe we need to say whether it's certified or not.
I agree.
So back up here, take out vernal pool habitat.
Yeah, and say vernal pool whether certified or not.
Vernal pool, whether certified or not, lands within 100 feet of any of the aforesaid resource areas. So that 100 feet would pick up the vernal pool,
Right.
which is fine. And then we go on intermittent streams, isolated wetlands, lands within 25 feet of those two resource areas. And a ponding area of any size, no additional buffer. And then perennial stream, river, etc., and adjoining lands out to 200 feet, riverfront area. I
Mm-hmm.
think we've parsed it the way we want it now.
Okay.
One thing that I'm seeing in the Concord bylaw is when they mention the buffer zone in the jurisdiction, they refer to it like in capital letters because they go on to describe it in its own section. So that might be something you need to do here if you want to.
Let's see whether we need another section talking about buffer zones before we go.
Just that's where you
Because
would
if
make
we
sure.
start adding that in, we're going to have to go back through the whole document and do that.
Well, that's where you would make sure the buffer zone's not made a resource. Because if you're not defining it, then it's just the buffer. Whereas if you do define it, you can define it as its own zone. So when you have the buffer area in this section, that's where you risk making it jurisdictional as a resource.
Well, we were doing that very deliberately.
But the way it's written here is similar to what Concord says, but they do word it slightly different just to avoid that potential issue where um, they say the adjoining lands out to a distance of 100 feet known as the buffer zone. because they define buffer zone later. So it only encompasses the 100 feet when it also meets the definition for a buffer zone.
Where do they define, I'm just looking at their bylaw, where do they define buffer zone? Because it's not,
It's on page
it's,
6 because I
so I
think
see that as a
they
special
deliberately word the
factor.
jurisdiction section to call out the adjoining lands to 100 feet. That
Mhm.
is known as the buffer zone, not just any land adjoining, because that prevents it from becoming a resource.
I guess I'm confused because they have the buffer zone under permits and conditions, but they don't actually have buffer zone defined in their definitions.
Yeah.
We've essentially defined buffer zones by creating 100 feet or 25 feet for
Hmm.
specific resource areas.
Hmm.
That's how we're defining buffer zones or buffer areas. Do we need to do anything else?
I wonder if the 25 feet mentioned should be in the same line as the intermittent stream and the isolated wetlands, because
It's
referring
picking
to it
up those
as,
two. It's lands within 25 feet of the previous two
yep,
resource areas.
but
Such
referring it to
lands to
as
be considered
previous
the
to,
buffer area.
like calling it the previous to isn't the clearest way to describe it.
Yeah, I guess you could
Definitely,
combine those two into one bullet and kind of go back to the original format and say, and the adjoining lands within 25 feet.
yeah, you could say intermittent streams and isolated wetlands and the land to 25 feet.
Feet.
Because saying like previous to, it's not the clearest what that previous means, the ones above it in the list.
So you're suggesting, Ethan, to combine intermittent stream and isolated wetlands into one bullet.
I would be comfortable with either. I think we are clear here, but I can do it the other way. I don't really care.
Yeah, let's
I'd
just
like
do it
to
the other.
keep moving this along though, because at this rate we will finish it in July if we're lucky.
Yeah. I'd say combine it because I know if you leave it the way it is, at some point the previous words will become an issue. When you look more on the legal or any other side of it, I'm sure that'll come up down the line.
Hmm. So it's interesting. Um, I'm just looking at Woburn now. They have their jurisdiction 100 feet of any fresh water, wetland, marsh, meadow, bog, swamp.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that case, instead of saying, um, the part about filling and altering that area, they use the jurisdiction to encompass all of it so that it all becomes jurisdictional. But then what's protected is refined later on.
Are you talking about for Woburn or are you talking about
Yeah,
here?
Woburn, like compared
Okay,
to what we have here.
okay.
Is what we have here, you would say, is the land subject to protection
Yeah, and I think we're
for the
saying
most
it's,
part,
yeah,
rather than
subject.
jurisdiction. Yeah.
Oh, hang on a second. Hmm. See
All
if I can,
right. Are we done with this?
I think so.
Good.
I can't chat something, can I? No.
What?
I was gonna put a comment into the text, but Yeah, so I'm just looking at Woburn as we're doing this. So they have the resource area, the resource areas, or within 100 feet of these resource areas.
Yes, which is
Um,
what we have up above.
yes. So I think it's consistent. Or upon any land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater or surface water. So that's their final resource area that doesn't have a buffer.
Is
That
that
would
any different from
that
ponding
would be
of
their
any size?
equivalent of ponding area of any size. Land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater or surface water.
We had that once upon a time.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean,
It's right here.
yeah. Ethan, Jennifer, why did you like ponding area better?
Then land subject to flooding.
Land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater or surface water.
I think to me, if you use the same kind of terminology as the Wetlands Protection Act, but then you apply different protections, I think that's more confusing.
Okay. So this says upon any land subject to flooding, as opposed to bordering land subject to flooding, which is the Wetlands Protection Act.
Well, Wetlands Protection Act is also isolated land subject to flooding,
Oh, is it?
you know, which has a size limit on it.
Okay,
We're not placing a size limit on it.
right. Okay.
Should we be therefore including land subject to flooding or inundation?
I,
Jennifer, you're suggesting we don't include that?
Well, I'm just explaining why I like the term ponding area instead of land subject to flooding.
I think land
I
subject to
guess the
flooding.
question is, if the Mill River overflows onto somebody's property once in every couple hundred years, does that define that property as being a wetland?
it's bordering land subject to flooding,
Yes.
right?
So is it a wetland?
The Wetlands Protection Act wouldn't call it a wetland because it's just once every 100 years.
Right.
The bylaw would call it a wetland if you just said land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater.
Or
It would
surface.
call it a resource, yeah.
I wouldn't call it it's something different.
Well, it wouldn't be a wetland, but it would mean
Are we trying to protect it? I guess
Yes,
my question.
that's for resilience. You don't want people filling that in and regrading it.
Yeah, for flood control and prevention.
Yeah.
Well, then where do we want to pick that up? Because
It's
at the
the
moment we
ponding.
don't pick it up. We get ponding areas of any size,
Yeah.
but that does not necessarily pick up an area of alongside a stream which floods that is within 100-year floodplain. Are we picking that up?
Do we want to say land subject to flooding of any size?
Well, I kind of like maybe Elaine's original definition because it includes everything. Sorry, going back as we're talking through this.
What
Uh,
did Elaine say? Because frankly, I've lost track of that.
well, we had ponding area of any size or inundate. It just got kind of broken up, but going back to the original bullet, it should be ponding area of any size or inundation by groundwater or surface water.
All is one term. Like that's all one term.
Yeah, I
Or
think
there
that's,
are two alternatives.
No, just
yeah, something got edited and sort of shifted around. I think
well, we've been editing this all night.
Mhm.
I think the challenge with saying inundation by water is that it might only take one event for the lands to become jurisdictional, kind of like you were saying, Paul. Because if it floods once, then the land is subject to, if it becomes inundated by groundwater or surface water, then that only takes one event to make it jurisdictional,
So this is
unless you
this
define
is
it
what I
more
thought I
further.
just heard folks say they wanted to do.
Or you could say, or a ponding area of any size. Um,
Well, that is the next bullet.
yeah, but they're kind of all the same thing, aren't they?
I don't know.
I see where Jennifer's getting stuck. Um,
I think I think just using ponding area does cover the
okay,
land subject to flooding that you want to cover,
okay.
because that way
All
it
right, let's,
also identifies a physical characteristic of water being ponded to a certain area.
okay.
Well, that's, I guess, the question. Are we trying to pick up areas that might flood? And are they any different from ponding areas?
I mean, wouldn't areas that flood, I mean, wouldn't those come to us because of the FEMA maps?
Well, I think these are just where people have naturally areas that get wet
Oh,
and store rainwater after
Right.
a
yeah,
flood. Like they're definitely
I mean, they're too small to be on FEMA maps.
right.
right. And typically they're in areas where there were intermittent streams that may have been filled in or whatever, and you have these sort of wet areas. Um, it is at this point just a ponding area where water collects, right? And I think it's a good descriptive way because you're not quite sure to say, like, is this a wetland or not, but we want to take a look at it. So it catches that
Okay.
to see,
So are you suggesting we leave this new
just,
bullet I just dropped in here in place or take it out?
well, it sounds like Ethan and Jennifer think it should come out. Um, we can just leave ponding area of any size.
Okay. Undo. There we are.
Okay,
All right. It is now 8:30 and we have not finished.
let's
We
keep
have
going.
just finished jurisdiction.
I need to be off the call by 9. So,
Okay. We need to move along then.
okay.
So Bill's comments about riverfront area, I mean, that comes up every single time. And by including this in jurisdiction, we're deciding to include it even without additional protections?
Wait.
I thought we wanted to cover the 200 feet of riverfront area as jurisdictional.
That's what we've been leaning towards. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we make a
So
final
let's leave it.
decision tonight.
We can
Okay.
ignore Bill's comment. We don't have to accept it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine to stay in, but I think it's also something that people might point out down the line too. If it comes to being proposed, they might say, why include it if you're not adding anything? Or how do we know you're not adding anything to it? That's part of what Bill's thought could be.
Well, let's continue on, leave it there, and note to come back to it.
I mean, this is one where like he's got a point, but at the same time, there's also this other school of thought that you want to um, include everything that's already covered in the Wetlands Protection Act, just for completeness sake.
In
Um,
each case, we need to reproduce the entire Wetlands Protection Act.
well, no, but that we do riverfront, even though we're not necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, I think the effect of it would be if there's an appeal, it would oh, actually no, then appeal would still go to DEP if there's no additional protection. Okay.
Yes.
But if you have like the
Leave it for the
25 foot,
moment
okay,
and we can come back to it. it would make sense to try to get a little bit more done tonight.
Hmm.
Is this a Bill comment? It is. Okay. Isolated wetland is a freshwater wetland not protected. Okay.
Oh, so he's saying a ponding area of any size underlain by hydric soil. Okay.
I don't see a problem.
Um,
Bill wants us to put in a minimum size. I think our whole thrust here is to not have a minimum size, correct?
Yeah.
So let's,
Well, and actually, sorry, just going back, the the ponding area of any size is typically going to be an area that's underlain by hydric soil, right? So maybe it is part of isolated wetland, but the exemption, the sort of exemption where that's happening is it's already typically in disturbed or lawn area. So you wouldn't put a 25-foot buffer on it because it's already kind of ex has the lawn exemption.
well, if it's a, I guess I'd agree with you, Eleanor, if it's a lawn.
Hmm.
right. I mean, we're talking about a ponding area not having a buffer, but an isolated wetland having a buffer.
Right.
But maybe I'm making back there too much of a distinction, but okay.
Well, I think with the ponding areas, we just don't want them to get filled in and flood places, but with isolated wetlands, we want to protect them in case they're vernal pools.
Right.
But if it is, I guess an area can look like it's lawn because it's getting mowed, but actually have hydric soils
Mm-hmm.
Right.
and could be a vernal pool.
No.
No.
Okay.
Vernal
So,
pool would have to have the species and would have to have the breeding species of obligatory animals.
right.
Right.
Um, but in theory, I mean, for example, this example that we keep talking about by Lake Quannapowitt, this area that ponds, could that conceivably be a vernal pool?
No.
Why
I
not?
believe so. It's a lawn,
It's a
right?
lawn.
Okay.
It
But
has
the soils are,
it has no ability to support the amphibians and other vernal pool species
Hmm.
because it's lawn.
because
Right.
it's
And it's being
lawn
maintained as lawn,
and maintain. Yeah, right. Exactly.
continuously maintained,
So it has hydric soils probably,
probably,
Probably.
because the
and
whole
I would
area
guess
was
there's a
filled.
lot of houses in this town that have hydric soils.
Yeah.
well, we don't, so it sounds like that's an area we wouldn't want to presume is a vernal pool. We'd want to treat that as a ponding area of any size.
Okay.
Right.
Right? Right?
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
presumption, even if the presumption is not true, it still takes the effort to rebut the presumption.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So where do we vernal pool? We've got any confined basin or depression.
In addition to the scientific definitions.
Oh, we're repeating ourselves too. We need to clean up this definition. But let's finish with the previous ones that are up above before we go there. Are we good with this 3 isolated wetland?
I mean, do we want to talk about a minimum size requirement?
I thought our whole thrust here was
I mean,
to not have one.
I think the challenge would come not from the wetland itself, but any of the buffers that it creates. So having no minimum size could make the work that you're doing might end up being in the buffer without you realizing it.
mhm.
Okay,
You might make kind of random buffers here and there.
I take your point. I guess what size is then the question.
Okay, so I have a presentation that was put together for Newberry, West Newberry. I can, well, I'll just find the slide and talk through. But people use different sizes. Some have no minimum limit at all.
Right?
Some use 1,000, one uses 2,000, several use 5,000. So the range is no minimum to 5,000. And it's pretty evenly distributed between them.
5,000 is a fairly substantial, that's almost big enough to be of building lot in this town.
Yep. So 1,000 would be like, and they're all apparently in square feet. Um, at
Yes.
least these 10 that
Yeah,
are,
a thousand would be, 20 by 50 feet.
that's still pretty large.
Sorry?
That's
That's still
large.
pretty large.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, which is why I'm not sure I want to go with a minimum size.
What
It does
about
take a
red?
good amount of size for an isolated wetland to be sort of self-sufficient. I think that's why you see these larger sizes.
What about self-sufficient to support vernal pool life or just
Like
wetland species?
to support itself as a isolated wetland, having no access to surface water. I think you might see smaller isolated wetlands being more ponding areas. The larger ones are more of the hydroxoil vegetated wetlands, sort of things that you could probably just see on the surface.
We can
Okay.
go back and look at the Voc um,
Like I don't think you'll have
wetlands because
a miniature
Mm.
isolated wetland that looks like a tiny wetland. If there was a small one, you might not even be able to see substantial vegetation.
Yeah, I like Eleanor's suggestion of looking at the size of the ones at the Vogue because there
Hmm.
were several and they're
yeah,
typical of what's in Wakefield.
the
Okay. Well,
IVWs. Yeah,
you want to take a look at that, Eleanor, and let us know?
yeah. Let me see what
We don't have to do that tonight. We can
tonight.
come back
Nope.
to it.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to delete Bill's comment here and simply add a comment here.
Mm.
Okay, so we'll just leave it with a what size question there. And we'll come back to that.
Okay. I think I'd reached out to somebody um, to Christine Ryu about a year ago, and the sizes were the smallest one was 11,040 square feet.
11,000?
Sorry, 1,140.
It's a funny size.
Yeah. Um,
You know if that was like vegetated or more just ponding?
these were isolated vegetated wetlands and some bordering vegetated wetlands, but we were looking at the isolated ones. Uh,
Let's go on. We'll
yeah,
come
go
back
on,
to
go on.
size.
Hmm.
Vernal pool definition is the next one we need to deal with. Right? Oh, rare species. Anything there that we want to mess with?
That was just my comment after our last discussion, saying the last section wasn't necessary, but you can include it either way.
I th I think you want to include it because otherwise there's no protections, right? The only rare species that are protected are if they are in rare and estimated habitats.
I think it would still be protected either way because they're still a rare species. Like they don't have to have been identified previously. They could be identified like on the spot. So
Mm,
they are still protected, but like what you had pointed out was the WPA doesn't have this statement, even though the statement is true in
I would
practice.
leave the statement there, honestly.
hmm
It
Yeah.
doesn't detract from what we're trying to do, and I think it adds some clarity.
hmm
Jennifer, any thoughts?
Well, I'm just trying to see that relates to the interest. So I just want to go back and look at how the interest is worded, the interest about rare species, because that's why we're mentioning it, right?
Hmm.
Protection of rare species habitat. So I wonder if does that mean we're going to have to define rare species habitat?
No, we're just essentially this says, you know, where the rare species are. So even if let's say you have a you know, Lake Quannapowitt, for example, it's not an NHESP
Yeah,
site, right?
yeah.
But if there were a endangered or something on the protected species list that's nesting, you know,
Mm.
on trees near the bank or something, we would want to protect that habitat.
Yeah, so if the rare species was observed within the limit of work, where would the rare species have to be?
Um,
Or just near the work?
well, it's habitat. Like look at Reedy Meadow, um, right? It's not just protecting the water, but they're rare birds that are in you know, the bordering
Yeah,
vegetated
right.
wetlands.
I guess what I'm imagining is if, you know,
We're just simply calling out, Jennifer, protection of rare species habitat, including rare plant and animal species.
yeah, I know, I understand that, but in terms of what this would actually look like and how it would apply in a situation that's not covered by the existing Wetlands Protection Act, if someone comes forward and says, "Hey, I have a picture of this rare species, and I saw it here in relation to wherever," and then
If
would we
someone's
only,
proposing to do something that would affect that particular area of habitat, I guess, and it meets other definitions for us in terms of jurisdiction, we could pick it up.
I
It
see what
always
you're
has
saying
to
there.
be something that's jurisdictional to us.
I see what you're saying, Jennifer. I'm going to look more into that, I think, because it's raised the question of what's the physical boundary of the habitat?
that's what I'm trying to say. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
Like how far does that extend? Is
Well,
it the whole
sometimes,
site, the whole property, for example?
well, sometimes I think we try to regulate that by putting conditions like, hey, can you know, time the construction or your tree cutting till after this period is over or something, you know what I mean? To just minimize disturbance.
Right. Although that may be something that we'd apply regardless of whether there were a rare species there or
Okay.
not.
Okay.
And we have, in fact.
Okay.
Yeah, because it says in the definition whether the site has been previously identified. So is the site just, within the erosion controls, or is it just the whole property? Is it like you said, Reedy Meadow, maybe the whole meadow becomes the site?
Well, that one is
It is.
NHESP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we're talking about not relying on any NHESP, but then what are our boundaries then that we're,
Yeah.
It's just an interest we're protecting, right?
Yeah, but I mean, so if someone says, okay, I want to do some work in my backyard, or let's say I say that, and my neighbor says, hey, I took a picture of this rare turtle and it's 10 feet from your property, but how are we going to evaluate that?
Is there a body of water, a wetland, that brings us into being jurisdictional? Because if not, we don't have jurisdiction to go there.
Right.
The existence of a rare species without a matrix with one of the bullets here, jurisdictional bullets, doesn't get us anywhere.
I guess, yeah, I
We
guess
don't
it
have the
allows,
authority to just protect rare species.
so it allows us to exercise, or gives us permission just to exercise our authority within our jurisdictional area
Right.
purpose.
Yeah, I'm picturing if you had a rare species that lived, say, near a river, if the habitat extends into the buffer, that's when it might kind of overlap each other.
Right. Okay.
So you need to know like how far that habitat technically extends.
Right. Okay. I'd agree with you there.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to define either.
No, it might be something just to leave to the state or at least do some more digging on seeing how we can mention it here.
I mean, we don't actually do anything with it
Yeah.
except talk about it right here.
Yeah, it's an interest, and that's
It's one of
Yeah,
the interests.
I think where it comes into the question is by adding the definition. If you
You
are
mean down
changing the
here?
definition, we need to make sure we know like what specifically is changing.
Well, let's leave the definition where it is for the moment.
Yep.
But I would guess I would say we need to decide what we're trying to do with it. And whether there really needs to be a definition or whether we just simply leave it in the interests up above and are silent the rest of the way through.
let's see, any other uh,
Okay, so we're going to stay with leave rare species as it is for the moment. Is that our?
mhm.
Yeah, at least leave it in there. Yep.
Okay. I'm just going to delete the 3 comments that are here. I guess I have to do that one at a time though. I'll leave review further there. And I'll leave your last comment there, Ethan. So vernal pool shall mean any confined basin or depression which shall include, in addition to scientific definitions found in the regulations under Wetlands Protection Act, any confined basin or depression which we just said above.
I-
Think we want to get rid of the redundancy of any confined basin or depression here.
Mm. Uh, okay, give me a second.
One way would be to say vernal pools shall mean, in addition to the scientific definitions found in the regulations under the Wetland Protection Act, any confined basin or depression not occurring in existing lawns, gardens, landscaped areas, etc. So we just get rid of this, get rid of the mean, we get rid of that.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Wait, vernal pool.
The term vernal pool shall, in addition to the scientific definitions shall mean,
Yeah, I would move the
I'll get rid of any this, shall
I
mean, in addition to scientific definitions, any confined basin or depression, etc. So I'm just getting rid of this clause from any to include.
okay.
Okay.
I think that vernal pool habitat, I thought that was defined in the Wetlands Protection Act.
I don't know. I don't know what Renault is asking actually here.
I think that's Ethan's comment.
No, it's Bill Renault
Oh,
comment.
it's Bill's. Um,
I'm not quite sure what he's asking because we have vernal pool or directly above.
I think he's thinking it's 100 feet from the vernal pool habitat is, I don't know.
I think he's saying define vernal pool as a resource, and then you can define the habitat separately without making the habitat a resource. But you
With,
almost describe it as a resource, like a protected buffer, almost like a setback.
so to me, it's a lot like riverfront.
Well, the reason that we have a problem here is the use of the word resource area.
Yeah.
Do we want it to mean be resource area? Vernal pool habitat is essentially what we're calling a buffer, a 100-foot buffer around a vernal pool, right?
I think it's closer to the setback, like the where you want like a no disturb setback.
So the Wetlands Protection Act defines vernal pool habitat means confined basin depressions which, at least in most years, hold water for a minimum of 2 contiguous or tenuous months during the spring and or summer, which are free of adult fish populations, as well as the area within 100 feet of the mean annual boundaries of such depressions. Um,
Okay,
to the
so we've
extent that,
broken it up into two. We've broken it up into definition of vernal pool, which is the first part of that, what you just read us, Eleanor. And then vernal pool habitat shall mean the adjacent upland resource area within 100 feet of the mean annual high water line. Do they call it resource area?
uh, let's see, let me go back. No, it just says
Vernal
vernal
pool
pool
habitat
habitat contains
shall
vernal.
mean, go ahead. Sorry.
It doesn't call it a resource. It says, I read the definition as well as the area within 100 feet of the mean annual boundaries of such depression. And then
Yep.
it's to the extent that such habitat is within an area subject to protection under MGL. And
Mhm.
really, I guess we would want to take that phrase to say, regardless of whether it's protected under the Wetlands Protection Act, because vernal pools are only protected if they are occurring within um, bordering land subject to flooding, no, riverfront and BVW areas. Like for them to be protected, they have to occur in other resource areas.
Okay, and we're not saying that.
We're saying regardless of whether, like essentially where they occur.
Yeah, because we're saying any confined basin or depression, not in lawn, garden, landscaped areas or driveways, which, and then the rest.
Hmm.
So I think we've broadened it sufficiently there. And it's really only a question of whether we need, whether we're trying to make the habitat into resource area. And if we
And
are, then I think we should leave the definitions exactly as they are for now.
yeah,
Yeah, and I do think I think we accepted some. I think Bill made some changes here that we accepted. I think he was the one that broke it apart into two.
hmm
Okay.
So we have accepted some of his suggestions here. One question I do have is, so for the habitat, we're saying that it's 100 feet from the mean annual high water line of a vernal pool.
that's
We
mhm.
we don't
Yes.
have a we don't describe a boundary on the vernal pool, but I think we have to, and I think Bill wanted that as well. But the boundary of a vernal pool is usually the maximum observed extent of flooding or high water line. So it's a little bit different for defining the pool itself versus the habitat. So do we want to make the
I,
motion?
So he has it.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
Hang on, I can't read the two things at the same time. Uh, as well as the area within 100 feet of the mean annual boundaries of such depression.
Where did that come from?
The Wetlands Protection Act.
Okay.
Okay. So the Wetlands Protection Act
Annual
has,
high water line.
Yes, mean annual boundaries of such
We use high
depressions.
water line instead of,
That's probably a better, because you'd see scouring and stuff. I think
right.
and that's the language he put in, right?
I don't know. I
Because
was going to
before we were
suggest,
saying top of the like depression kind of thing, and he didn't like that.
mhm.
So I
I was
think if,
going to, go ahead. Let's wrap this up.
yeah, if he's happy with this
All right.
definition.
I was going to suggest that we take this last sentence, a vernal pool may have an intermittent inflow or intermittent outflow, and put it back up with vernal pool in 8, because it's really part of that definition. It's not part of the habitat definition, is it?
but you're correct, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Okay. There we are. Ethan, someone's going to have to go through this and clean up the formatting. No problem. Do that. Okay. Next, we're down to public project exemptions.
Oh, I thought we made changes to this and we just, hang on a sec. I think, what did he say instead of?
These are all bills, these blue ones.
Yeah, I think we can delete maybe we just have to think of a new name for the public exemptions because it's really not, um, they're kind of more general exemptions. You know what
Well,
I'm,
I don't think he was objecting to public project exemptions.
mm,
He was objecting to minor project exemptions.
mhm.
It was just the title. I think calling it exemptions is all you need to say, whether it's public, minor, major, more of a
So we just
simplicity.
take out that title in B, public project exemptions.
Yeah, I mean, it's different than emergency projects. It's more like, um, standard exemptions or general exemptions.
Okay, all of these 4 under B are public projects.
Are they?
Well, they are projects for public benefit. I mean, electricity, gas, sewer, water, cable, telephone, telegraph, internet.
Okay.
They may be provided by a utility or they may be provided by the local government. So I'm not sure.
Why don't we just accept all his changes there and leave?
Yeah, the important part is the text that comes after the title. That really describes what is being exempt.
So just get rid of the title.
Or you could just call it exemptions
Well, the whole
or
section's called
exempt
exemptions.
activities.
Well, we have exemptions up here. Section 4 is exemptions. It doesn't apply to
Do we
emergency.
want to say exempt municipal activities?
Or
Like
Well,
I
we're
think we can
also going
rename
to
that later.
exempt, we're also going to exempt the phone company, cable company, so long as they're maintaining, repairing, replacing, but not substantially changing or enlarging. So it's not just municipal.
Okay. So we'll come back to the title, but let's make sure we already went through, I thought, and we're okay with his changes. So can we accept the language there?
I thought we had. I mean,
We said we would, but there just wasn't a version circulated that had the changes accepted.
all right. I guess I have been making changes and leaving the changes highlighted. We can go back through and accept all the changes once we're done, but let's just get through it as
Okay.
we can. It's 9 o'clock, so,
Yeah. I have another minute or so. I'm just waiting.
all right.
do we want to, we're meeting again on the 17th. Do we want to schedule another meeting for this?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing then.
Oh, do you want to keep going down?
All right. Well, then can't do both. I can't get to my calendar and
Oh, okay.
continue sharing. That's the problem.
Okay. Sorry.
Maintaining, we're keeping all of this stuff, right?
Um,
I think
yeah,
these
like
are all
we agreed
no.
to take all his changes here.
All right.
So I would, yeah, just accept them really quick and we can fix the title later.
All right. I've just taken in all of those.
And then we can, uh,
He put in roads and sidewalks up here. I'll fix the
yeah.
spacing later.
Yeah, I think I was okay with his edits here because he addressed them down below. So he's kind of lining it up so it's aligns with the Wetlands Protection Act exemptions. And I like the way he said it would be exempt provided there's no regrading, you know?
Okay.
So I would accept that.
Which one are you talking about, Eleanor?
Oh, uh, I think from, yeah, there. Are you okay with that, Jennifer?
This is all deletion.
Yeah, so we would just accept that.
Okay.
But I don't see a need for major minor.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay.
Yep. And I would just delete those
All of
again,
this is, I'm going to accept the change here.
unless Jennifer has a question.
Well, I have a question about number 1 above. You scroll up.
Maintaining, repairing, or replacing, but not substantially changing or enlarging.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Bill had the comment about would this include upsize of a water main, and he felt that it would, that sometimes upsizing is needed to, um, protect existing property. So I do think if we leave that in, or enlarging, I think that
I think that's how the Wetlands Protection Act is worded. Let me pull up the exemptions.
I think we covered what he was saying about improving them, but the other concern is if he wants to, like you said, upsize it, it wouldn't be considered a replacement. It would be more of an upgrade. So I was just wondering if that would also be included. Because
But I,
his first question was like, could you replace it with something newer? And then we fixed that. I think he's more just wondering what's the extent of what we could do. If you want to just, is there certain parts of a sewer replacement that you're more interested in seeing?
I, I think that language about not substantially enlarging comes from the Wetlands Protection Act. I just have to find it. In the hang on a second.
I don't see anything about enlarging.
Mm.
Okay, I think I do see a 1002. Um,
I mean, it would be exempt because they have a very simplified definition, whereas we started to provide more, like the more words we added, the more it really shortened the definition. Because in the WPA, it's you can install them or repair them in existing paved roads. It doesn't go into too much detail about the size of the pipe itself or storm drainage. Yeah.
well, but I'm looking at a section under 10.02 to uh,
In the WPA?
yeah, activities conducted to maintain, repair, replace, but not substantially change or enlarge an existing and lawfully located structure or facility used in the service of the public and used to provide electric, gas, water, sewer, telephone.
That's exactly our wording here.
Yeah, it is. And I guess, I mean, it doesn't seem like too much to ask that if they wanted to enlarge it, they would submit an NOI or, at least come before the
But
commission.
he's talking about the next one, the storm drains enlarging.
Okay.
Or the what you just read was for the one above it.
Well,
Um,
he's raising the question about the one above it with the
oh,
upstream of a water main. And then in the storm drainage, he's talking about bioretention areas.
Well, I think, well, those are BMPs, the bioretention areas, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, what section were you seeing that language? I had grabbed it from there.
10.02 2 A 2.
so that's referring to those activities within the resources itself
Okay.
on that section. Yeah.
Oh, so that's in the resource area itself. Okay.
But that is what we're saying as well.
Is that what we're saying? I didn't see the
Well,
part
let's
of
see.
it.
The following activities are exempt, provided written notice has been given to the commission. There is no alteration. Okay, there's no alteration to resource areas. Oh, I
So
guess
we
it does.
don't actually have that notice to the commission in C.
Well, I guess to Bill's question, because if that's referring to work in the resource, or you're upsizing water mains in the resource, or are we considering the buffer upsizing as a separate exemption? Or would it be covered in both?
I feel like upsizing in the buffer is uh, less of an issue than upsizing in the resource
In a
area.
resource area. I agree.
Yeah.
I I recognize that there will be cases where he's going to have to change the scale of a main or something like that, or a water main or a sewer line or something. I don't see this asking too much unless it's an emergency situation, in which case he can do it to have it come to us.
Yeah.
So I'm not inclined to change this any further. Okay. Should we look at C for a moment, or do you want to quit, Eleanor?
I think we were okay with those unless you guys had.
I'd see, I just want to suggest one thing here,
Okay.
which is pick up what Jennifer just read to us, provided that notice has been given to the commission and provided that there is no regrading and there is no regrading and no alteration to. Is that acceptable to you guys?
Yes.
I know that
Sounds
was
good.
something that, sorry.
Provided that notice,
I know that was something Bill mentioned. He would not recommend having, and I'd agree, because like what we have now with the exemptions, they don't require notice. It's more of a big change to ask that to come your way.
okay,
Like usually if something's exempt, you can just do it anyways without notice.
okay. I mean, I'm open either. The only reason I'm putting it in here right now is because I thought I just heard that being read to us from the WPA. Was I
No, I
misunderstanding
think
what
that
it
was
said?
just with the last section specifically.
Yeah, that was from the previous section B.
Because this will be a big change on people
All
doing
right.
Yeah. Of
work that's not going to be very favorable.
course, they have the burden of proof, right?
Well, we don't want to get notice of routine maintenance of lawns
No,
or building repairs. So
no, no,
pretty
no.
much all of these things are things.
They're routine.
The one question is number 4, because we have been getting notices on decks, sheds, patios, and pools where they're converting lawns.
So
And we've been getting those in cases where things are more than 50 feet out. I think we dealt with one this last meeting, didn't we?
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, we do get RDAs on these a lot.
Yep.
yeah. Why did that one come as an NOI?
That was an RDA.
Well, I don't care which it was. I
Yep.
think the question is, are we going to exempt this?
I think the exemption does help when reviewing those RDAs. It provides a benchmark of what is ready to approve when it meets the exemption versus what is going to take more review to look at. So I think it's good to include just so you have it as a reference to know what and why a project would be considered okay to do. Because here it's the distance plus the erosion controls that and the nature of it being a smaller addition, like a deck or a shed, that's what makes it exempt, and that's what makes it to the level that it doesn't quite have to have a full NOI.
So you're suggesting just leave things as they are there?
Yeah, I think so. I think it works
Okay,
well.
that's fine.
I,
What
I
about
do
this?
I do have a couple of concerns about that. I mean, we're getting these under the WPA, so essentially we're just saying this exemption would apply to intermittent streams, isolated wetlands, but they'd still come to us under WPA, BBWs.
Right,
Okay. And then second, it says, so long as the activities are located more than 50 feet from the mean annual high water line or bordering or isolated vegetated wetland, but we're presuming those are vernal pools. So we're basically saying you can decide yourself if it's an isolated wetland or vernal pool. That just doesn't seem consistent with the presumption of a vernal pool.
That's a good point.
right.
I mean, to me, this is more of like what you can do within your current lawn area if you're within 100 feet of a
Right.
wetland.
That is essentially what it is. It's converting lawns to these decks, sheds, patios, and pools.
Yeah, so anything
But I mean, we did
50
do that
feet or
one this
more.
week. That was a pool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything like more than 50 feet, you could just do it. But even if you're within 50 feet of a vernal pool, you might not be entitled to the exemption, but you could still do it with a permit. So it's not saying that you can't be within 50 feet. It's just that if you are within 50 feet, you don't have this automatic exemption.
Right. But I guess what I'm asking is, would that have ruled out that one we did the other night?
Oh no, that one was less than 50 feet.
Hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess we want a grandfather even within vernal pool habitat.
Well, I think
We
it's
want to we want a grandfather, or do we want to block that, Jennifer?
Well, if we keep it written as is, then we're basically saying we're kind of grandfathering, even if it's a vernal pool habitat, which
Yeah,
I
because
think is,
here you say within 50 feet from the BVW and isolated wetlands, but you don't say 50 feet from the vernal pool. So it's just whether you want to include the vernal pools there or ignore them in this case.
It's not clear to me. The language is somewhat unclear because it says is located more than 50 feet from the mean annual high water line or bordering or isolated vegetative wetland. So mean annual high water line of what? That would seem
Usually a
to be the
stream.
vernal pool.
That would be a stream or a vernal pool if that's how you kept the definition.
So I'm not sure that's what we want. I think what Jennifer was suggesting and what I'm inclined to agree with is we don't want to exempt activities in close proximity to vernal pools.
hmm
I think that's going to be tough in practice because with the presumption of a vernal pool, we're going to assume a lot is a vernal pool,
Yeah.
and then we're going to say, hey, you can't convert your lawn to a deck.
but I think we would allow lawn to deck. It's more like we don't want forest to lawn or forest to deck.
Right. So that's in
Well,
favor of keeping this as is, right?
Yeah, you would still let the lawn be turned into deck. It's just whether or not you can do it without a permit or whether or not you can do it with the permit.
yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, this
Right.
is essentially exempting it. You don't have to come to us at all.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. But maybe we need to be more inclusive than just bordering or isolated wetland. Because what about intermittent streams? What about vernal pools?
Can you just add that language in there quickly?
Do we want to,
Where-
so we're going to say that converting lawn to decks or any of these other accessory uses will be exempt, even if it's so long as it is more than 50 feet from the mean annual high water line of a vernal pool or an intermittent stream or a bordering or isolated vegetated wetland. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I do have to peel off. Okay.
Okay.
So should we schedule by email?
We probably need to schedule another one. Yeah.
I think we can schedule by email, right?
We can do that. Yes, we can schedule by email. You're right. There's no reason we have to do that this instant.
Okay. Thanks for doing that, Paul. Thanks, Ethan.
This is what's today? 3,
3-5.
5. All right, it's saved. I'm gonna stop sharing. And I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And Eleanor, will you second?
Second.
All in favor? Jennifer,
Yes.
Eleanor,
Yes.
I vote yes. Okay, we will communicate by email to schedule
Okay.
another meeting.
Mhm.
We have a site visit coming up in a week too,
Mhm.
right? Okay, week from Saturday.
Yep.
All right, maybe sometime between now and then we can get an evening where it'll work for all of us.
Thank you.
All right, thanks all. Good night.
Yeah.